Just one thing to the right, guys. It's like the indie scene definitely is like if you went into any meetup and said, "I want to write your game for free," I think you have a few people bite. It's good. Actually, it's weird you said Facebook games because my day job is I'm a designer on a Facebook game. At the moment, it's an early game which is based on the BBC TV show and stuff. And it's weird. We've been in closed beta, and all of our feedback so far has been about the writing. To a ridiculous level, as people are really getting into it. Yeah. But I think you're right, they're paying attention.
Do you know what your demographic is?
They're fans of the show, and they love the characters. And they...
What about gender and age?
Oh, female, slightly older.
And yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like the vast majority of Facebook gamers are, you know, sort of older adult to middle-aged women, and they all want to read.
Yeah, and it's amazing watching it. Anyway, self-promotion aside. I said that to give some context because the day job is a lead designer and I work with freelancer writers, and we try to give the kind of freedoms you're talking about and kind of bring them into the office and this kind of thing, and then get them kind of giving us thoughts on levels and making that work. I'm kind of interested in what the optimal environment for you on a game is. What if you know your dream job? You work on a video game, what's that work like on like a higher level, but also on like a detail, like day to day, what are you doing to achieve the best possible experience for yourselves?
It depends entirely on the project. I mean, so if you threw me £10 million or whatever, I would probably go and make a game. I would quit Marvel and go and do, you know, an action using larger scale. You know, it's not like
assume he's talking about being hired.
Yeah, so me being hired is very different. As in my problem, I have so many other like irons in the fire, as what I like to say, which is everything from me.
Well, put all that aside. It's your idea. I'm interested because I know what my answer is to this. But what's your ideal? You know, imagine that you had no other commitments. You've been.
How do I make it perfect for you?
Yeah.
If I had no other commitments, it was generally my only job. I would like to be in as much as possible. I'd like to be, if it was literally my only job, I would be involved. I want to, you know, I would be basically part of the development team. I would probably want to be on staff. Is actually, this is the thing. If I wanted to really do a game narrative, I would want to go and work at BioWare or something. You know, that is. Or I'd like to be part of an indie team. I'd like to, you know, Jim. I'd joke if Jim ever did an RPG, totally again the money to hire me. You know, that would be fun. That would be for me. But as a freelancer, if it was just like one, more like the curfew. Even though the curfew was still, that was basically me doing like one comic, as in instead of doing 5 comics a month, which is what I normally do, I did 4 comics in the curfew. So it's that kind of still regular meetings, still in a small team, and quite intimate.
So it's like involvement, basically.
Yeah, basically, you know, it's all. I mean, I'm prepared to be a member of the band, as in I don't need to be the guy with the name on the cover, but the feeling you are part of the band as opposed to just playing the triangle.
And that's exactly it. That's exactly it. I mean, that's basically I'm pretty much the same. So I call that's 100% across the entire industry, every writer. Writers are egotists. We are all massively egotists. We all want to do.
Unfortunately, so are designers.
Yeah. I know. This is the big clash. But we all want to do everything. And this is the thing. Like, I'm the same. I would want to be involved at high level in narrative design, in level design, in quest design, in mission design, and then in the nitty-gritty, writing the dialogue, which is the sort of thing Chris Avalone did on Planescape. On why he went a bit mad.
500 bands.
I know, it's insane, isn't it? This is the problem, yeah, is that the ideal job is one where you are pretty much doing everything. And anything that and everybody else is just basically a monkey doing what you tell them to.
As you said before, that almost, you become a designer.
Right, that's exactly. Exactly. So it's, you know, as much of that as possible without actually becoming a designer.
And what's the bit you don't want? That would be interesting. It's like, what is, because you did just describe
the donkey work. Yeah, basically
spreadsheets with numbers of values and
exactly. All that stuff. That'll just you know, no writer wants to do that. I don't think. Alt dialogue, like barks and alt dialogue and all stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely, because I do that, and yeah, it is a bit mind-numbing, but it needs to be done, and it's important because you're going to see a lot of it. You're going to see it a lot of times.
And so designers who are frustrated writers by the criteria you just set up, basically.
I think both jobs are about wanting to be God.
Yeah, exactly.
I think designer and writer.
Writers are frustrated designers, and designers are frustrated writers. But I've lost my thread. What did you say at the end?
God.
No.
Sorry.
Doesn't matter. It all comes to me. But yeah, basically, my answer is the same as Kieron's. The ideal position is one where you are involved at every level. My current sort of MO when I've been hired in a game, I generally like to go and spend a week, sometimes 2 weeks, like in the studio, with the team, having meetings, maybe doing a bit of actual writing, but mainly having meetings, getting to know everyone, getting to shape the game, try it out, show your face, be involved, and have people want you to be involved, which is the tricky bit. That's what that's the really tricky bit, is when the studio actually want you to be involved and have influence, because a lot of the times they don't. And a lot of the times, most people in that studio, apart from maybe the person who hired you, resent you being there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a jealousy sometimes with design, like, designers frustrated that they have to get a writer because their lines weren't good enough. In a lot of cases, I've seen that.
I've seen that as well. Yeah. Or you say sometimes it's purely that they have no idea that the writing is important or that it can make a difference. I wrote CSR Racing, an iOS game that came out earlier in the year, and has since become one of the most successful iOS games ever. That success, I would say, has very, very little to do with my contribution. But what was interesting was that the developer had to pay for me out of their own pocket. The publisher would not finance it, wouldn't reimburse them for the cost of hiring me, because the publisher saw no point in hiring a writer. Luckily, the developers, who were a micro studio formed from the ashes of Black Rock, when that got closed down by Disney, they knew me and they knew what I could do. They knew I actually had an interest in that sort of game. And then, they basically paid me out of their own pocket, took a bit of a gamble. But then when the work was turned in, and this is not me being egotistical, this is more about the value of writing, because the publisher, Natural Motion, had never done a narrative game, or a game with narrative even. When the work was turned in and Natural Motion saw it, suddenly Thorsten, whatever his face is, the Natural Motion president, declared that from now on all their games would have a writer involved, because it made such a difference to internally, as much as anything. People suddenly knew why they were doing this thing, what the world was. They had an idea about some characters. It fired everybody up again, got everybody interested in the game.
So one of my favourite pieces of game writing of all time is probably Space Invaders title. It's literally, because without that, there's nothing there. That's the moment. They're invaders from space, and everything is there. You're here at the bottom, they're invading. And immediately, the story creates motivation. For me, that's narrative's point. Narrative's primary point across all video games is to add meaning to abstract interaction. It's more interesting to save a princess from the castle than to go from left to right. These are the reasons why we implant on characters. This is what narrative is quite for across all games, almost all games, even like Tetris.
Yeah. But writers are constantly fighting to make people understand that. Because there are still an awful lot of people in mainstream games especially who simply don't realise that that's the case, don't understand the value that narrative can bring to a game, even to a game like CSR, in which the gameplay loop is like 30 seconds long. You're just racing down the road.
Can we move on to some of these guys? They've been up a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure.
Hang on, sorry, Frank.
Okay, sorry. Hello. As someone that's really enjoys writing and designing, it's a real comfort to know that you guys said that it should really be one and the same. So thank you very much for bringing that up. It seems both companies just did that. So thank you. One of the questions I wanted to ask about this, was just so you're obviously with writing for comics and writing for video games. Do you employ different writing strategies to when you go in and start developing the narrative for both of them?
It depends on the project, and this is another one where it depends. It changes from game to game and from comic to comic. If it's a comic I'm creating from whole cloth, that's naturally going to be different to most games where I'm going in and the basic premise is already established.
Gun in the bottom right hand, hold the screen.
Right. So. Well, sometimes more than that. Quite often you go into a game and there's, they've already got, because they've already built a world, so you can't change too much because they're not going to remodel it. And so you are just kind of like adding a veneer on top a lot of the time. So naturally their strategies are going to be different because there's simply not as much for you to do fundamentally for you to do in the sort of creation of the world. But it changes from game to game and comic to comic as well. But at the end of the day, it's all writing.
I think Julian Widows, you know Julian, don't you?
No.
You did Rage. What was it? Work with one else? He did Hostile Wars.
Oh, right. Okay.
Sort of chat. Julian said basically Hostile Waters was kind of like a carry command game circa like 2000. Really good, but basically they kind of brought Warren in to basically contextualise. Okay, can you give some like cool science fiction explanations? So Warren, laid along all his nanotech. And he brought some of his hard science, and he brought a motivation of here's the utopia. Basically, it's the old bastards of the old world are raising up, and one last chance to fuck over utopia before. And he brought an element of poetry, he brought his ideas, and his kind of fission of ideas over the game added meaning to this game. So in his case, Warren very clearly looked at the game and thought, okay, how can I explain everything? When he did this, he took like the old Rotary idea of like dead AI people, and that's one level of attacking. I mean, with the when I did the curfew, I generated an idea by myself on there. The topic was basically, since it's a Channel 4, it's under their educational budget. So the idea is basically how to have educational content in one of the areas they're interested in. One of them was mental health, one of them was political rights. I had an idea for a kind of mental health game. And they also had an internally generated one, which basically was the proto-curfew, the idea of something 1984-y with a kind of like Canterbury Tales type structure. In the end, I'm quite glad we went that far, because I think actually, since the idea was theirs, it made everyone feel invested in it. More than I attacked their idea and tried to work out ways to make that fundamentally work. Because, you've got, okay, 4 people in a room, why are they in the room? Why would society believe curfews? What's it say about the world we live in? So, fundamentally, the situation proposes problems. The same with comics, in the X-Men, you look at the X-Men and where they are in the Marvel Universe, what the X-Men mean, you go back to first principles. Is this a minority metaphor? Is it a minority metaphor? What minority? How have they done before? How can we do that different now? My main influence on the X-Men was actually the student rights. Actually, I wrote primarily the X-Men as an age thing. So that's how you do it. You just basically what is interesting here, what inspires. I'm putting what interests you, because if it doesn't interest you, it's not going to interest anyone else. And if you're going to write, if you have 500,000 words, you've got to give it a toss.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point about writing in general. Is that no matter what you are writing, and no matter what if you're hired to write something, find the part of it that interests you and that makes it fun for you to do. If you're doing something wholly original, and you get partway into it and realise that actually you're not that interested in it after all, then just drop it, forget it. Because if you're not energised in some way, that's a bit wanky, sorry. But,
if you're bored, everyone else will be.
Right, that's a plainer way of putting it, yeah. If you're bored, your readers will be bored. So that's really, really important. I actually got that from Alan Moore many years ago. I was on the phone to him talking about some adaptation of his that I was doing. And we were just chatting, and he said, like, even when he was doing, some six-page... even when he was doing like some 6-page backup Green Lantern story in the 80s that he really didn't care about, he would find something in there to zero in on that would make it fun to him. Even if it was just a tiny little in-joke that nobody else would spot, he would make sure there was something about it that made it fun for him to write. Which is how you end up with things like the Superman story. What was it called?
Well,
what do you get for the Man Who Was Everywhere?
What happens to Man Tomorrow?
That one. Yeah. No, the one I'm thinking of.
No, I think it's the other one he's thinking of. Not that one.
No, that was the one I was thinking of.
No, not only One Who Was Everything, that was the which one do you mean? Sorry, as in that one, I think you meant the one with the present.
Oh, no, I didn't mean the one with the present.
So that's what the man. The One to the Man of Tomorrow is the one about the last story.
Oh, no, that's good as well.
Yeah, they're both good. Which good story? Comics. Rubbish.
Too many of them. Too many of them. Brain can't handle it.
Any more questions?
We are...